Hi everyone, it's Stephanie Weaver. I'm here in the blue and yellow kitchen with my guest today, Chef Dadisi Olutosin. Hi Dadisi, how are you?
I'm well. How's everyone?
We're good. And today we're showcasing a beautiful book that Dadisi's a part of called Toques in Black, a celebration of black chefs in America. We're going to be making a version of his jollof rice recipe. Tell us a little bit about jollof rice while I get the rice and chicken broth in the pan.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Jollof rice is a West African dish that's cooked throughout West Africa. It originated in the country of Senegal. Senegal is a francophone country, and they don't necessarily call it jollof. They call it mimich, which is a Wolof word for rice. Um, but in places like Liberia and Ghana and Nigeria, you refer to jollof rice. Jollof rice is basically a red rice. It's a rice that's cooked in a stew of tomatoes, peppers, and spices. It gives you this red look in the rice. It has some similarities to paella. It has similarities to jambalaya out of New Orleans, as well as it has similarities to red rice, which is a dish out of Charleston and Savannah. So, a lot of connections between the dish in both West Africa and in the American South because of the rice culture that exists in both places.
Cool. And so, what I wanted to do is also, we have a map of Africa because having been an educator in the past, I know that Americans aren't super well versed in geography. So, Nigeria, which is where your family is from, is here. This is the western part of Africa, which is where the slave trade was capturing people and enslaving them and bringing them to the United States. And this was a rice based area of Africa, correct?
Well, yeah, well, parts of Nigeria were, but really most of the rice culture that America ultimately inherited and was the foundation of Southern cuisine came out of the Senegambian region.
Oh,
Again,
okay.
where the origins of this dish is. There is a huge connection between the people, the Gullah Geechee culture of the Carolinas and South Georgia, the Sea Island coast, and a number of West African groups that were known for growing rice. That was one of the primary reasons they were brought to the U.S. is because of their knowledge of cultivating and growing and harvesting rice. But yeah, the dish in and of itself has more of a Senegalese origin, and you see that cultural aesthetic make its way to the Americas in that part of the southeastern part of the country.
Okay. So I just put the red palm oil in the pan, and I'm showing the camera that it's very red and beautiful. And so red palm oil, it comes from the fruit of a particular palm tree. It's the crushed fruit, and it's very high in beta carotene, vitamin A, also very high in vitamin E. It has a lot of health benefits. So you may have heard of palm kernel oil or fractionated palm oil. Those are not as healthy in terms of the health benefits, but this particular oil, which has a high smoke point, so that's good for cooking over heat, but it's also semi-solid at room temperature. It's a little bit better in terms of the health benefits, and it also provides a unique flavor to the dish and the really strong red color. So I wanted to make sure we showcased that. One of my neighbors was kind enough to buy a jar and share some with me. So, and then when I went to the Nigerian market to buy jollof rice to try it to see what a restaurant version of it looked like, of course they had a whole shelf full of the red palm oil. So it just depends on where you shop. You might be able to find it. So this is kind of a two-part dish. So we've got jasmine rice or basmati rice. You can use either one. Rinsed about 6 times. So you really want to do a thorough job rinsing it because you don't want the rice to be all sticky and clumped together. And then it's 2 cups of chicken broth. We'll be sharing his recipe. in the links, so you'll in the comment section, so you'll be able to have that. 2 bay leaves and 2 cloves of 2 cloves, dried cloves, and then a half a teaspoon of salt is what the rice is in cooking. And now we're going to start the pepper tomato dish. So tell us what the components of the vegetable part of the dish are, Dadisi.
Well, typical components are going to be tomatoes, and it can be any tomatoes. I use plum tomatoes because I'm fancy, but it can it can be beefsteak tomatoes. It can be your regular red tomatoes that you can find in the grocery store. Keep in mind that this dish, although in the cookbook I made a fine dining version of this dish, this dish is a dish, an everyday dish of regular people. So it's about utilizing ingredients that are common to the area and you can easily access. So tomatoes, onions, it can be Spanish onions or yellow onions as they're known. I like a little bit more peppery taste in my onions, so I'll use purple onions or red onions.
We've got shallots.
You can use shallots if you're really being fancy because it gives it a nice little flavor. I also use red bell peppers because the whole notion of this is that you want the rice to have this reddish color. So between the palm oil and the peppers, and also you're going to throw in a little cayenne. There's a spice to this, and if you can handle spicy food, there's a lot of spicy components that go to this. And you basically mix all of that together.
Garlic too. You got garlic? Yep.
Garlic as well.
Okay.
You mix all that together to give you a paste that you ultimately loosen up with the chicken broth, and then you put that with the rice itself, and you let it simmer and cook, and you stir it as you need to make sure it doesn't stick together until everything is done.
Okay.
It's a simple dish, but it's not a simple dish in terms of the technique you're going to use to make it.
Right. So what I'm doing, I keep stepping over. So I've got a glass lid on my, and I also, so we're going to talk about the peppers in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in, which is why I'm wearing the gloves. So, so the Scotch bonnet peppers, which are harder to find, at least in this area, they may be easier in different parts of the United States. These are habaneros, which are the substitute. Scotch bonnets are actually twice as hot as habaneros, and they're a little bit more yellow, and they look like little tam o' shanters, the Scotch tam o' shanter hat, which is why they're called Scotch bonnets. So they're, and I did at the Nigerian store, did see that they had hot sauce made from Scotch bonnets, so I was like, I bet that's really hot, because habaneros are really hot.
It is. What you'll find interesting, and this is pretty global, not just in Africa, but cultures where it's very hot in terms of the weather tend to have hotter food.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think it's an evolutionary thing. I think, in the same sense that people who are from, Western and Northern Europe tend to not have a lot of spice or no spice at all in their foods. Typically have to go to Southern Europe, Southern Italy, Southern Spain, even Southern France, if you go like to Marseille, where you start seeing more of a Mediterranean mix of cuisine, and you start seeing more usage of spice, whether it's spice for the purpose of seasoning or spice for the purpose of heat. But even then, it's not the same as, say, if you eat Thai cuisine. If you think about Thai cuisine in conjunction to other Southeast Asian cuisines, it's one of the hottest ones. Right. It use a lot of peppers. And then certain Chinese cuisine, depending on what area of China, like Szechuan, they use a lot of peppers in their food as well. So I think it just has to do with evolution. It's how people evolve in those areas is what's growing there. And their cuisines develop developed around those ingredients. And pepper became one of those things where it was just so hot and so, it'll make you sweat, but it was so good.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so we have a dish in Nigeria called pepper soup. And pepper soup is extremely hot. You can't take really spicy hot food. You'll have a hard time with it, but it's delicious. And it literally is so hot to make you sweat while you're eating it.
So maybe there's a physiological cooling effect to the sweating, that maybe that's why in hotter climates the food has evolved. You know, we've definitely traveled like in Southeast Asia and had some really hot food, and you know, you usually wash it down with, you know, beer or something, a cold beverage.
Yeah.
So
Like if you think about some American foods that have a little spice to it, or better yet, even some of the Middle Eastern food, what they typically would use is cucumbers.
right, or yogurt.
Yeah.
That cooling.
Save your palate.
Right. So I'm just going to show them, I'm going to slice this pepper open. So I'm wearing gloves because these are very hot and it's hard to get it out, the oils off your hands, and it's really easy to touch your face, your eyes, and then be in serious pain. So, and Chef also recommends actually using a separate knife and cutting board if you're working with really hot peppers. So I just want to show you, when you open it up, the seeds and the ribs are going to be the hottest part of the pepper. So you definitely want to remove those for sure in this dish and really kind of scrape them out. And then what I did the first time I made it was I actually used a quarter of a pepper to just see like how hot that was, and it was not very spicy at all for my taste. So today I'm using a half a one, and we'll see. Hopefully it won't be too much because I didn't add the cayenne the last time. But that's what's nice about cooking for yourself, is you can decide like, oh, I really want something hot. So the recipe, as you'll see, I recommend 1/2 to 3 of these kinds of peppers. So depending on your comfort level with spice, you can really make it wicked hot, or you can, you know, just kind of have it be more white girl wimpy like me. But that's what's nice about cooking for yourself. But this is what you want to do, is you want to just get rid of all those seeds and ribs and just then cut up the flesh. And it is going to be blended, so you won't be getting any bites of the really hot pepper. It's going to be, you know, diffused throughout the whole dish, which makes it a little bit easier. All right, so I'm going to take my gloves off, and that way now I can kind of show off the book while everything's cooking. So what we've got is the pepper mixture in one pan on the stove with the red palm oil. And we've got the rice cooking, which once it came to a boil, I turned it down to a low simmer. And I've got a timer going, so when the timer goes off, then we're going to check and see kind of where the rice is at, and hopefully everything will be done around the same time and we can blend it together. So tell me a little bit about so it was a photographer named Alan Batt who put this book together, is that correct?
Yeah, so Alan Batten is a friend and a fellow photographer, because I also do photography, and we met a couple of years, actually more than a couple of years ago, about 3.5 years ago. But we had been following each other on social media for some time before that. And I was, back in 2017, I cooked at the James Beard House in New York. Matter of fact, the dish that's in the cookbook, in which you're cooking one part of it, was a dish that he came and took photos of for the book. So the one that you see in the book right now is actually from 2017, October to be exact, when I was cooking at the James Beard House for food.
Fantastic.
And so
beautiful.
The book is, you know, the book highlights 101 black chefs throughout the country. Some of them your audience will recognize, like Marcus Samuelson or Carla Hall, or a few other people who have national notoriety. But also it highlights chefs throughout the country.
Right now I'm showing Jackie Gordon's white salad, and then I was going to flip over to Kenny Gilbert's photo, which is really beautiful.
In the book as well, passed away last year. She was very famous in New Orleans, a restaurant called Dookie Chase. And so, you know, with all that being said, the project was basically a passion project necessarily an option for them. And 40% of the sales, the cost of the book is going toward this particular mentorship program in New York. As you can imagine, right now the program is not functional because of COVID-19 and how New York was shut down.
So, Chef, how does that look? Does that look cooked enough? No, it's a little hard to tell.
Yeah, because you cooked it first, right? And then you're going to put it in the food processor?
Correct. So the tomatoes are kind of breaking down. The peppers look reasonably soft. The shallots are definitely browning. I can leave it on for a couple more minutes if you think.
I'd say give it like 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes,
Go
okay.
ahead and process it.
Okay, and then my
the book, Alan did a great job. We are still doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get the word out about the book. The book has been written about in the New York Times, Forbes magazine, a couple of major food magazines have written about it as well. So we're making a lot of momentum considering that we weren't able to have our big event in New York back in March.
Right.
Where we were going to have all of the chefs in the book come together.
Oh, wow.
And do demos, etc., around the food that's in the book.
Yeah, and so he also now on the website, so there'll be a link where you can buy the book directly from Alan, who has produced it, and then the proceeds will be going actually now to support some of the chefs in the book whose restaurants are struggling to stay open, and so they've pivoted a little bit in terms of where the money's going to be going. But it's one of the things that's come out of the recent demonstrations for racial justice and Black Lives Matter are people wanting to amplify Black voices and learn more about Black culture. And so I had bought the book because one of my friends is in the book, Jackie Gordon, who I know Chef knows, and I just thought it was quite beautiful. And then when we decided to start to do the Blue and Yellow Kitchen show, I thought, I definitely want to showcase that book. And so we will be giving away a copy, so you can share this video and tag a friend in order to enter. But I would encourage you to follow the link and maybe purchase a copy for yourself as a gift. All of the recipes are in the back, and a lot of them are more of a fine dining. So like you might find like your dish, Chef, has 5 components, and I wouldn't normally make a dish with 5 components, but you can certainly pick one of the components to make, and it was really fun for me because I had to, like I said, I hadn't cooked with red palm oil before, so I had to source that, and I found a local market that's like 10 minutes from my house that I'd never been to, and now I know where if I want to make Nigerian food or Ghanaian food, I know where I can go to get those ingredients. And so it's a really wonderful way to make connections within your own community as well when you're shopping for ingredients that might not be so familiar. And it's just a really beautiful celebration of Black culture in America. So that's why I was super excited that Chef was able to join us today. So that was my timer. I'm going to go ahead and pull the pepper sauce off. Yes, Chef?
Yes,
okay.
Please do.
All right. And then my rice has holes in the top, the steam holes, but I'm going to look to see, and it looks like all the moisture's been absorbed, so I'm going to turn that off. I think we got that right, so that's good. All right, so this is going in the food processor, which will be a little bit loud for just a moment. So you're recommending I add a little bit of chicken juice and a little more palm oil to kind of loosen this up, is that correct?
Sure.
Okay. And would I do...
Ultimately, the way you want it to come out is you don't want the rice to clump up.
Okay.
It's good that you washed it as many times as you did. And, you're going to continue to cook it some more with the, mix in there.
Okay.
It's fully integrated. And then you should be done.
Okay. So I'm going to put the last of this palm oil in here because I have about a teaspoon left from what my neighbor gave me, which was very nice of her. And then a little bit of chicken broth. And then we're going to kind of see, then I'll show you the texture and we'll see. It's going to be loud and it's going to make the camera vibrate, so my apologies in advance. wouldn't say it's a chunky sauce, but it's still definitely got some texture, but it's fairly loose. Let me get it right in the, you see, does that look about right, Chef?
See, bring it over to
Sorry.
your left a little bit more.
That way.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably say maybe you want to loosen it up a little bit more. Maybe add a little bit more vegetable stock. I mean, not vegetable stock, but
The chicken stock.
to it.
Okay. I did make my own chicken stock, Chef. So I just want you to know, it's a full. It's the full treatment here. I made my own chicken stock. Yeah. Alright, let's take a look at that. So yeah, that definitely seems a lot looser, and I can smell the palm oil, which is, here we go. Can you see that?
Yeah, and that's important. Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, alright. So, should I deglaze the pan with a little chicken stock before I put everything back in there?
You can. You don't have to. I would probably just say go ahead and mix everything and
pan's
then
kind of
pour
got
liquid in it.
Okay. Alright. I'm going to turn the back on, and I'm going to put all this in here. And also, red palm oil does stain, so just be careful with what you're wearing and your surfaces. It's kind of like a turmeric situation where you really want to be careful with it because it will stain. Alright, so I can put that over there. So I've got a couple extra. Alright, so I've got that on, and then when you take the rice out, you need to pull out the 2 bay leaves and the 2 cloves, because those don't go in the rest of the dish. So you got to fish those out. And the bay leaves are from my garden, so it's nice to have the fresh bay leaves. Alright.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, a lot of what you're doing right there, just for people who are watching, if you talk to a traditionalist about how jollof should be cooked, they might even say this is wrong, or that's not how I would do it. My approach to traditional dishes is I want the flavor profile, because typically when I cook it, I'm going to do something else with it. The original recipe that you'll see in the book is actually a jollof risotto, so it's not a pure jollof rice, because the dish that I did is a mixture of Italian, Senegalese, and Nigerian cuisine. So, you know, ultimately it comes down to you really doing the work to get the flavor profile right. Everything else will fall into place.
That's great. So what I'm doing right now is just stirring the rice in, and it's pretty loose because I think maybe there was a little bit of liquid still in the rice pan, but you don't want it to be like a big sticky mess, so that's good. I think that it's pretty loose. And what I mean by that when I say loose, everybody, is that it's not like all sticky, thick. It's got a nice, as I'm stirring it, it's, you know, like moves around, and I can see that it's absorbing the pepper mixture. I can see some kind of small, very small pieces of the pepper mixture, but mostly it's just kind of a sauce. So I think that, you know, if I wasn't on camera, I probably would have blended it just a little bit longer, but I think this probably is fine. And then, Chef, does it normally you cook it for another couple minutes altogether?
Yeah, I'd probably say, you know, if your rice is relatively done and you cook your mixture, you're gonna put it on low heat and let the steam of the low heat take it to the finale. The key with cooking this dish is that it should not be wet.
Okay.
Ideally, it should be closer to dry, and, you know, because the way that everything mixes in together, again, you want to be able to see each kernel of rice. So, yeah, I typically finish it off with low heat, covered, and let the steam, you know, let science do its work.
Oh, so you would cover it at this point?
Yeah, I cover it at that point
Okay.
just to make sure that all the liquid, evaporates out.
Okay. See, I would think, so my lack of knowledge, I would assume that if I cover it, that's going to capture more liquid and it won't cook off.
It'll retain some of it at the top of the lid.
Okay.
What'll happen is it'll rise up, and then you take the lid off and just let it cool, or turn the heat off and just let it continue to use the heat that's already in the pot. The top of it will completely dry off as well, and then you should be done.
Okay.
But ideally, you're gonna take a wooden spoon and kind of flake through the rice anyway, just to make sure that none of it really stuck at the bottom. You don't have any burnt flavor, because of the solid nature of the mix, and because we didn't strain it, you have a high likelihood of getting some of that sediment at the bottom of your pot and burn.
Right. So while we're waiting for that to finish, let's talk about your recipe, because there were additional components to it, and I wanted to have you at least kind of talk about those, because when we had our phone call, I just found it really interesting that every piece of this has a story, and I just wanted, while we're waiting for the rice to finish up. So
the dish in and of itself is
here we go.
labeled in the book poulet yassa ossobuco with jollof rice and afe. So
Spread.
for those of you who are fans of Southern Italian cuisine, you probably know what ossobuco is, which is basically, ossobuco is Italian for open bone or exposed bone. So it is
Oh, I didn't know that.
poultry, I use chicken. But it could be beef, it could be a host of things. But the idea was, let's take elements of a traditional African, West African dish, and do a fusion of it with other cuisine from other places. In this particular case, I chose Italy. So
Okay.
a lot of Mediterranean food, in many of the ways that it's cooked, is very similar to how foods in West Africa are cooked, because we tend to use natural ingredients. People farm, people grow their own. So you want to talk about kind of the beginnings of farm to table. That has been going on for thousands of years amongst people in various parts of the world, because you didn't have access to quick food. You had to harvest it and cook it, and if it wasn't edible, you had to figure out how to make it edible. So the way that the chicken piece, or the poulet is French for chicken. Basically, we poached the chicken, and then we added a traditional Senegalese way of cooking chicken, which is poulet yassa in Senegal. The key ingredient to how you brown the chicken is with mustard. Mustard gives a certain flavor to the chicken, and so mustard is a component. We poach the chicken first, we let it cool, then we mix it in with mustard. The kind of mustard, Dijon mustard that you see the mustard seeds in, and then you brown it. The chicken is already done, so you don't have to do a lot of work with it. That's one component.
And then
the other component.
The next thing it's sitting on is the vegetable dish. Tell us about that briefly.
So the vegetable part of this is referred to as yassa.
Yassa, okay.
So yassa is basically, from I guess a description of yassa would be, yassa is a type of a stew chutney, if you will. If you're familiar with how chutneys are made in India, yassa has similar components, but it's carrot, pepper, and onion based, large on the onions.
Yes.
So what you typically do with yassa is, if I'm making a one-pot dish, and Senegal is famous for having great one-pot dishes that are shared in a communal eating style. you would take whatever items you're cooking, the broken rice. So speaking of rice, and the reason why I mentioned broken rice, Benitin is more of a broken rice dish. Unlike how typical jollof is cooked in Ghana and Nigeria, which doesn't use broken rice. And these comes from cultures where basically you don't waste anything. When we do the rice harvest, all the parts and pieces that did not go off to the market, we keep it and we cook it at home.
Sure.
So it's a one-pot dish. You put your meats or whatever you're going to put, and then you cover it in onions, and then you slow cook it. So it'll be a combination of onions and Scotch bonnets and other spices and seasonings, and you slow cook it. So you get this flavor, the water, the moisture from the onions runs off into the dish, so you have a kind of a ready-made sauce. And yassa, how I put it on here, it's a combination of Spanish onions, carrots, garlic, Scotch bonnets, and olives. So you get pitted olives, and you add that to it, so you're building a flavor profile.
Right, and then you also have fried olives as garnish with the mafe sauce, right? Which is the groundnut stew or peanut.
I wanted to blister those olives as a part of the plating with the next dish that our component, which is mafe. So mafe is a sauce. It can be referred to as a soup that's made with peanut butter. Okay, so peanuts were brought to the Americas by enslaved Africans during the transatlantic slave trade. In certain parts of the South, they refer to them as goobers. Okay. Also, there used to be a candy brand called goobers as well in the South. I remember it because I used to eat them when I was a kid. And so, peanuts in other parts of West Africa, in the English-speaking parts, not the Francophone parts, they refer to it as ground nut stew, because that's another word to describe peanuts is ground nut. And so, although interestingly, scientifically, peanuts are not nuts; they're actually legumes. Right. But this particular sauce is made with peanut butter, unsweetened, because this is a savory sauce. I typically make it with low sodium chicken broth. You throw in Scotch bonnets. As you can tell, there's a lot of pepper in every single one.
There's a lot of pepper. Okay.
Right. Ooh.
How's that look?
That looks good.
Yay!
That looks excellent.
Yay! Oh, I'm excited.
I think you're gonna make a lot of your newfound West African friends happy with that dish.
Yes, I know.
And so with the mafe, when you guys get a chance to look at the photos of the book, I use the mafe not as a sauce to cover the chicken, but I use it more as a sauce around the plate, so that as you're eating the risotto, you can mix it in with the sauce. Now, some of you may have nut allergies or whatnot, specifically peanut allergies. Unfortunately, there's no real substitute. If you use, something else as a replacement, then it would be another dish. It wouldn't be mafe.
Okay, fair enough.
And mafe, because some things, just like in language, that they don't translate, it's just this is what the word is, and there's no translation for it. Certain foods, there's no real translation for it to another cuisine. It is what it is. And so in this particular case, whether it's mafe or groundnut stew, the key component in either of those is unsweetened peanut butter.
Okay. So I just tasted it. It's delicious, and it's not too spicy for me. So I think I could probably go with a full habanero next time, as long as I get the ribs and the seeds out. And that would probably be pushing my comfort zone. But microwave boy really likes spicy food, so our the way that we work things out is that we have hot sauce that he can add to stuff so that he can enjoy it, his spice level. But yeah, this is delicious, and as you can see, it was not a lot of work. It was about maybe 10 minutes for me to prep, and maybe about 20 minutes to cook. So really, in 30 minutes, you could have this dish. And I would encourage you to try, to get the book, obviously, try some of the other dishes, maybe not make them all on the same day, because it is quite a bit more work, and that's partly why fine dining restaurants are expensive. It's because if you order a dish, it may have 5 or 7 components that took hours of labor to develop.
Oh yeah.
And that's why those restaurants are having such a struggle right now. So if you are able to buy the book, you are going to be supporting some of these chefs who very generously shared their artistry with us. And Chef Dadisi, thank you so much. You can follow Chef Dadisi, that's his handle on Twitter and Instagram. And check out the book and the link. And if you want to possibly win this copy, then you need to share the video and tag a friend and then leave a comment that you did that. And we will be sending out 1 copy to a lucky winner. Thank you so much for sharing your culture and heritage with us. I really appreciate it. It was lovely to have you. And have a wonderful day, everyone.
Hey, thank you very much, Stephanie. You guys have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.